Hello and welcome. It is Sunday, November 1st, 2020, and this is Truly News. I am your host, Jason Van Sickle. As always, we start the podcast with a quick rundown of the top headlines from the nation's largest newspapers. And from USA Today, a caravan of Trump supporters surrounded Biden's campaign bus on a Texas highway on Friday, trying to slow it down or stop it. Police were called, who then escorted the bus to Austin. From the Wall Street Journal, North and South Dakota now have the highest rate ever of U.S. COVID cases. However, even with a 45% positive test rate, businesses remain open and masks remain optional. From the New York Times, as Trump toured Pennsylvania warning of post-election chaos and confusion over results, Biden teamed up with Obama in Michigan to rally additional Midwest supporters. From the Los Angeles Times, a Stanford University study of 18 Trump rallies has estimated that the rallies have been super spreader events, which have led to more than 30,000 infections and 700 deaths. And from the Washington Post, early ballots now total over 91 million, which is 65% of the total votes in 2016. That points towards this being the first election where more votes will be cast by ballots. And here are the stories that are crossing the wire at Reuters News. A Texas judge scheduled an emergency hearing for Monday over claims that 100,000 ballots from an illegal drive-through voting event in Houston should be thrown out. And also from Reuters, as the election nears, COVID cases in the U.S. have reached their worst level ever, with the country setting a new world record as it reported over 100,000 new daily cases. And those are your top headlines for today. Now, here is our announcer, Ron Johnson, with a word from today's sponsor.
Today's sponsor is Herman and Urkel Clothing, founded by Pee Wee Herman and Steve Urkel, and best known for their multiple lines of skinny jeans. Are you lacking leg muscles, a sense of self-awareness, and trying to desperately look young and hip? Then you need skinny jeans. Try one of our many styles of extremely tapered jeans, including our popular but completely ridiculous red skinny jeans. Thank you to Herman and Urkel Clothing for today's sponsorship.
Thanks, Ron. And now we return to today's news. In Science News from Science Magazine, dogs have lived with humans for a long time, but there has been controversy over when dogs became humans' best friend. However, a group of geneticists recently analyzed over 2,000 sets of ancient dog remains dating back thousands of years across several continents and found that the dog-human relationship began over 15,000 years ago. To read more about this article and learn more about the other stories you hear on today's podcast, visit the Truly News print edition at trulynews.org. There, you will find the news that is reported in this podcast with links to the original articles. And moving on, in technology news from MIT Technology Review. In an opportunistic attack during COVID, hospitals are being targeted by cyber thieves with ransomware. Ransomware is the practice of hacking into a computer system and locking everything so the owner, a person or business, must pay a ransom to get it unlocked. At least 6 U.S. hospitals have already been attacked. In space news from Scientific American, scientists are searching for a distant but large 9th planet that could exist in our solar system. The orbits of the known planets seem to suggest the possible gravitational influence of another planet. So, astronomers are now using techniques for analyzing telescope photographs to look for faint objects that may be a sign of another planet. And that is your science, technology, and space news for today. Now, we take a break from the headlines and lighten the mood with our fake, or maybe true, news of the day, presented by my friend Billy Cunningham. Billy is a comedian who goes by the stage name Potbelly. And here's Billy.
Thank you and welcome. This is Billy Potbelly Cunningham with my story of the day. And here we go. In what is obviously a very productive use of time and resources, researchers in the Netherlands have 3D printed the world's smallest boat. A headline from Popular Mechanics explained that the boat is so small that it could sail down a human hair. The scientists created the boat as part of their research on what they call micro swimmers, or tiny things that can float and move in liquid. Oh man, I think I occasionally had a few micro swimmers in my tub as a kid. Well, that is my story for today, and you decide whether you think it is fake or true. Until next time, be kind to others, be good to yourself, and keep on smiling. This is Billy Potbelly Cunningham. Over and out.
Thanks, Billy. We now return to our review of the day's news. In health news, from Healthline, Americans experience 2.8 million antibiotic-resistant infections every year, which causes 35,000 deaths. This is the result of bacteria that has become resistant to antibiotics. This month, the government released a new set of objectives that include researching new ways to treat and prevent these infections, as well as increasing public awareness. In social news, from the Pew Research Center, most parents of kids who are K through 12 students are concerned about their children falling behind due to online learning. On the other hand, parents with students that are attending in-person classes remain concerned about exposure to the virus, but seem to be mostly satisfied with the steps that have been taken to prevent the spread of COVID. In environmental news, from U.S. News and World Report, along with the devastating fires in the United States, this year Australia also faced a catastrophic season of wildfires. Now, based on an investigation of the Australian fires, researchers recommend more effort be made to improve the ability to forecast impacts of climate change. They also warn that the fires are going to become more extreme. And that is your health, social, and environmental news for today. Now it is time for our Words of Wisdom with philosophy professor Dr. Albert Feinstein. And here is Dr. Feinstein.
Thank you and welcome. Today's words of wisdom come from Socrates, who said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." What Socrates is pointing out is the fact that the quality of our lives has meaning, depth, and greater purpose when we learn how to look at and examine our lives. Without that self-awareness through self-examination, our lives are simply haphazard, lacking focus and true purpose. It is self-awareness through an examination of one's own life that leads to a life where we are focused on living, which makes life worth living. And those are your words of wisdom for today. Until next time, keep seeking wisdom and believing in your incredible potential. Good luck.
Thank you, Dr. Feinstein. We appreciate your words of wisdom and your words of encouragement. Now we return to our review of the day's news. In economic news from CNBC, the Federal Reserve, the organization responsible for setting financial policy, announced that it is lowering the minimum amount for government business loans from $250,000 to $100,000. That will make more small businesses qualified to apply for help as part of the government's program to aid businesses negatively impacted by COVID. In world news from the New York Times, schools are staying open in Europe amid a new round of lockdowns that are occurring as European countries face one of their worst waves of COVID. These policies seem to be largely based on concerns that the pandemic is doing long-term harm to both the emotional and academic development of the present generation of school children. And that is your economic and world news for today. In entertainment news, we start with new movies, and today's movie is The Spell, starring Omari Hardwick, Loretta Devine, and Lorraine Burroughs. This movie falls into the categories of horror and thriller. And here is the description from IMDb. A man crash lands in rural Appalachia and awakens in the attic of a traditional hoodoo practitioner. He desperately tries to break free from her dark magic and save his family. Spell is now available for rent on YouTube. Moving on, in newly released shows, today's show is Star Wars: The Mandalorian, starring Pedro Pascal, Carl Weathers, and Gina Carano. This series falls under the categories of action, adventure, and sci-fi. And here's the description from IMDb. This series is about the travels of a lone bounty hunter in the outer reaches of the galaxy, far from the authority of the New Republic. Season 2 of The Mandalorian is now showing on Disney+. Finally, in our entertainment news, we look at newly published books. And our book for today is Untamed by Glennon Doyle. This book is presently number 2 on the New York Times nonfiction bestseller list. And here is a summary from Amazon. In her most revealing and powerful memoir yet, the activist and speaker explores the joy when we stop striving to meet others' expectations and start trusting the voice within us. Untamed is now available at your local bookstore and in print, audiobook, and Kindle formats on Amazon. And that is your entertainment news for the day. As always, we end our broadcast with Hope for Humanity, stories about the goodness and kindness that people show each other every day. And here is today's story. From Houston, Texas, an act of kindness is multiplied. John Berlisky found out that he needed a kidney transplant, and his wife Tara offered to donate. Given the fact that John had AB blood, he could receive a kidney from almost any donor. So, doctors recommended a kidney sharing program. The Berliskys agreed, and last week 30 hours of surgery involving 80 hospital staff saw Tara donate to a 40-year-old pastor whose cousin donated to another man, and his mother donated to a woman whose supervisor donated to another woman, and her sister donated to John. Because of the kidney sharing program, 5 people in total received life-saving kidneys through a shared act of cooperation and kindness. And that is your news for November 1st, 2020. Have a wonderful day.